Tonight, be prepared to be amazed as we look at some truly strange happenings in our own backyard.
And there were hundreds of dead flies on the windowsills, which had just been cleaned 5 minutes earlier.
From the werewolf of Grosse Pointe.
The pact was that he could be turned into a werewolf and could pursue her and keep her.
To Henry Ford's ghost at the River Rouge plant.
Not to worry, that's Mr. Ford. He's been seen here from time to time. He will be here from time to time.
To the spirited melodies in Indian Village.
The presence passed by her and sat next to her on the bed.
Even the elegant Fox Theater sports its stories.
That after all the lights were turned out, the two lions at the bottom of the grand staircase would get up and wander about the theater all night.
Be prepared to be amazed, entertained, and a little frightened as we take you on a tour of the haunted legends of old Detroit.
Join us as we share with you some legends and folklore that are a unique part of the Metro Detroit area's heritage. They are fascinating, eerie, and some may even seem like they're unexplainable events. But in this Halloween season, it is easy to believe that some of these supernatural occurrences are possible. The Boxford Inn in Farmington, built in 1836, was the romantic rendezvous where Henry Ford I met his wife, Clara. The beautiful ballroom upstairs at the inn provided the couple with countless hours of enjoyment. When Grand River Road was being expanded, the inn was to be torn down. Henry bought the hotel, and it was moved a short distance away to its present location and restored. After Clara's death, waitstaff began reporting strange occurrences in the restaurant and the ballroom.
Clara Ford's ghost remains in the ballroom, and it's sort of her domain. And when she's not ready, things don't happen. Or things happen that she's not pleased with, we know about it. For instance, there have been times the waitstaff would go up and set the room for a wedding, and it would be set for the next day, and they would come in, and all the cups would be turned upside down, or all the silverware would be reversed, or all the chairs would be back from the table and be on the floor in an anti-symmetrical fashion. Or there are times when we want to enter the room before or after a function, and we literally can't get the door open, and there's no one in the room. And we could walk away and hear the latch, and then go back, and the door would open. One of the busboys was coming up the stairs from the kitchen area, and he was heading to the ballroom, and there was a force against him that was actually keeping him from going up the stairs. And he almost felt as though he was in a vacuum, and he saw this white cloud, and somehow it continued to push him down, and then there was a point where it just released him, and he was able to come up the stairs. The sightings are more things that happen, you know. When you would go to turn the lights off, the people closing in the evening, they would turn the lights off, and the lights would actually come back on, and the switch wouldn't move. And they would turn it off and on, and the lights would continuously, if it wasn't the time for the room to be formally closed, the lights would be turned back on.
You might think that a graveyard is the best place to find a ghost roaming about. On the contrary, spirits tend to gravitate toward places that are familiar or that have a significance to them. The beautiful, elegant homes in Indian Village have been around for over 100 years. Charles Hughes, a writer for The Detroiter, was the original owner of this home. He and his wife had a hard time keeping help because of some strange occurrences in the basement. One of the maids stated that Mrs. Hughes' mother had been talking to her as she went about doing the washing and the ironing. The mother had passed away years before. This grand old home has had 2 additional owners since the Hughes had lived there. The present owners have lived there for over 20 years and have learned to deal with the unexplainable events that happen from time to time.
The first experience happened to my mother when we first moved in. She had just gotten a box of books down from the attic and was looking at them in the master bedroom, lying on the bed, when she felt a strange presence come into the room. It was sort of chilling, and the presence passed by her and sat next to her on the bed. Well, when she looked up from the books, she realized that nobody was there, and there was a depression right next to her, as if someone was sitting there. Other experiences we've had are things like the shower turning on, lights flipping on by themselves. Also, piano has been heard playing in the living room when no one's there.
The Ford River Rouge plant still feels the touch of the hand of Henry Ford.
The story was brought to me by a gentleman who was sitting in the break room, middle of the night, and felt a shadow go by the window. And as the shadow went by the window, they both reacted, but one of the gentlemen went right back to his coffee, and the man that called me initially was beside himself. It was the middle of the night. No one should be out there. Who could this be on the grounds? And he turned to the other man, also working security, and said, "What's going on here? Why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you responding?" And he said, "Not to worry, that's Mr. Ford. He's been seen here from time to time. He will be here from time to time. He's just coming through to make sure that things are working in orderly form. This is one of his favorite places. His sense of responsibility precedes him, and so he's just passing through to make sure that things are good, things are humming, things are moving right along."
The first public cemetery in Detroit was where Greektown stands today. When the Trappers buildings and the brick streets were being built in the mid-1800s, the graves were moved to where Eastern Market now stands.
There was an 1893 Detroit Journal article which stated that people who lived in the Gratiot, Russell Street area believed that Eastern Market was haunted. They heard strange sounds, including people crying out in distress. They also reported that they saw strange, dark, shadowy shapes moving in various sheds on Eastern Market. Most people related this to the construction of Eastern Market 3 years earlier in 1890, when a cemetery, the Russell Street Cemetery, was disturbed and graves were relocated. Many people saw this as the dark side of Victorian progress in Detroit.
One of the bodies that was moved from that first city cemetery was moved much later than the others, because the tombstone bore a curse. The body was that of Nathaniel Hickok, who died in 1832 of cholera. The curse was originally penned by William Shakespeare in 1616 and reads, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake, do not disturb this dust. Blessed be he that saves these stones, and cursed be he who moves my bones."
It's uncertain why some vows to return after death are kept and others are not. The old Grace Hospital at John R. and Willis in Detroit, in room 401, Harry Houdini died on Halloween night. The world-renowned escape artist vowed to contact his wife from the other side, if it was at all possible. He gave her a coded message that only she would know. Every year, a seance was held in room 401 on Halloween, but no substantial communication was ever experienced. The old Grace Hospital was torn down in 1979. Harper Hospital now stands in its place. This Halloween marks the 70th anniversary of Houdini's death.
Harry Houdini made a deathbed promise to his wife, Bess, that he would attempt to contact her from the afterlife using a secret coded word. Bess took the vow seriously, even offering $10,000 to anyone who could help her contact her departed husband. One man had evidently succeeded, but before he could collect the money, Bess discovered that her husband had made the same promise using the same coded word to a mistress. Devastated, Bess gave up trying to contact her husband. Over the past 70 years, however, others, including magicians, clairvoyants, and witches, have continued trying to contact the spirit of Harry Houdini. The most recent attempt was held at the American Magic Museum in Marshall, Michigan. There, locks and bagels were lowered slowly into a piece of Houdini's apparatus. The thought was Houdini, being Jewish, might respond to that offering. He did not. However, since Houdini died on Halloween, a night when it is said that free spirits are free to roam the earth, there is little doubt that on future Halloweens, others will continue to try to contact the spirit of Harry Houdini.
Unexplained events can happen to anyone. Are they all supernatural, or are they all in our imagination? The River Place Grand Heritage Hotel, overlooking the Detroit River and Belle Isle, was the home for the Parke-Davis Laboratories at the turn of the century. The hotel has welcomed visitors from around the world to its estate-type setting since 1981. Even this wonderful gem taunts its share of unexplained events.
Room 301 was the last room to be prepared for occupancy. It was our staging room. And the housekeepers went in, thoroughly cleaned the room, vacuumed out the room. There's a relatively long corridor that leads up to the bed, and when the supervisor went back in to check the housekeeper's work, not even 5 minutes after she had finished the room, she found that the room had been vacuumed, but that there were footprints all around the bed. Totally unexplained is how they could get to the bed from the door, given the length of the corridor. Not only that, but the bed was not ready for a guest's occupancy. It looked like it had been used, and there were hundreds of dead flies on the windowsills, which had just been cleaned 5 minutes earlier. There are other numerous sightings or occurrences in the hotel. The employees were working down in the kitchen. They were preparing food, and it was fairly early in the evening. It was light, almost dusk. It was not completely dark, and they saw this very small figure walking by the windows in a Revolutionary War, what they've described as a Revolutionary War or that period type of a costume. And they ran out to look at it because there was a door from the kitchen outside to the patio. They ran out to look at it, and all they could see was turning the corner and rounding the building, and it disappeared.
Even peaceful roads lend their path to legends of spirits who may remain among us. In the 1930s through the 50s, the legend of the White Lady of Tanglewood Drive on Belle Isle became the talk of the teens at the time. A young bride was supposedly killed by her new husband on the bridge on that road. The legend stated that if you shut off your car lights and honked your horn 3 times, then a white form would appear before you in the road. The legend varies as to which street the accident actually occurred on, but the reports of the reoccurring event are the same.
The legend of Knock Knock Street has been talked about in the Detroit area since the 1940s. It tells the tragic story of a little girl who was the victim of a hit-and-run accident. In some versions of the story, the little girl is crossing the street. In others, she's riding her bike and is knocked off. In either case, she's dragged along behind the car. With her good arm, she hits frantically at the side of the car or the rear bumper, trying to attract the attention of the driver. But unfortunately, the driver does not stop, and the little girl dies. In subsequent years, people driving down the street hear strange sounds, poundings, and knockings. Some assume it to be the ghost of the little girl reliving that tragic accident. Others feel that it is something to do with the construction of the street, air pockets perhaps. The street was dug up, repaved, but the knockings and poundings continued. So many people went down the street that in the 1950s, in fact, police had to cordon it off. People continued going down the street to the point that recently the street's name was changed to protect the residents' privacy.
Romeo Plank Road in Clinton Township tells the tale of Luke the Spook. It is said that Luke is one of 2 possible spirits. Some believe it is that of a railroad linesman who died in a train accident in the late 1800s. Legend tells of a freight train being forced to stop because of a man standing on the tracks waving an old linesman lantern. When the engineer descended from the train, the lineman disappeared into thin air, but on the track ahead lay a fallen tree. Others believe that the spirit is that of the late Dr. Lucas, who died when his buggy went into the Clinton River one foggy night when he missed the bridge. His death also took place in the late 1800s. Some claim to have seen the old-fashioned buggy as it went on its way. More recently, a Detroit police officer and his wife have told about driving through the area and seeing a strange light which seemed to be floating in midair. When they drove nearer, the light began pulsating, and then it attacked and actually pounded on the car windows. Over the years, the landscape has changed. But what caused Lake St. Clair to rise 5 feet and swallow St. Felicity Church in 1854? The legend of Lausanne is a chilling testimony to the power of the dark side.
The story of the Canadian backwoodsman named Lausanne, who came to the little village of L'Anse Creuse and opened a tavern. The people strayed from their church and went to the tavern, and the village priest implored the people to return to their church and stay away from the tavern, but they refused, and a curse was levied on the village. One dark night, Lausanne mysteriously died, and a great storm came from the lake, swept over the little village, and destroyed their church.
Located 2,000 feet from the shore, in 10 feet of water, lie what are believed to be the remains of that church. The exact origins of some legends and lore are not known. Some began as superstitions or rituals handed down by previous generations. Such as putting out a ghost light may have been stories that were drummed up by one's active imaginations, combined with the cooperation of an old, creaking building. The elaborate decor of the Fox Theater can easily inspire one to hear the lions roar at night after everyone has gone home. The legends tell of such an event reoccurring every night.
The theaters are rife with lore about ghosts. Right here at the Fox Theater, during the renovation in 1988, our cleaning staff reported that after all the lights were turned out, the two lions at the bottom of the grand staircase would get up and wander about the theater all night. Traditionally, every theater has a ghost, either a performer who just can't resist coming back to give that last performance even after they've passed on, or customers so thrilled with theater going that even after their death, they come and still want to see a show every night. These days, though, we have insurance against ghosts. Our union stagehands, a very superstitious lot, bring a ghost light out after every single show, and then there's at least one light glowing to keep all of the ghosts at bay.
Could this be someone who loved this theater so much that their spirit continues to attend the many performances that are held here year after year? When the moon is full and high in the sky, can you hear echoes of howling in the night? If you do, it might not be the neighbor's dog. It might just be the werewolf of Grosse Pointe.
There's a fascinating tale of a young woman named Genevieve who lived here with her father on the shores of Lake St. Clair and was leaving to enter a convent in Three Rivers, Canada. Her young lover, Jacques, was distraught that he would be losing her and made a pact with an old Indian that he would sell his soul to the devil if he could keep her here. The pact was that he could be turned into a werewolf and could pursue her and keep her. One dark night, as she was walking along the shores of the lake, the werewolf ran from the wood to attack her. She flew to the grotto at the shores of the lake, imploring the statue there to save her. As the werewolf leapt from the shore onto the rock, he was turned into stone and spent his days as a rock on the shores of Lake St. Clair.
Grosse Pointe is no stranger to ghastly legends and lore in its past. Though the shores of Windmill Point have been altered since the windmill that gave the spot its name has stood there, its legend lives on.
This is the legend of the Devil's Grist. Some 200 years ago, a brother and sister built a mill on the shores of Lake St. Clair. The sister became ill, and the brother stayed to care for her. The sister became suspicious and accused the brother of caring for her only to gain his half of the mill. She said she would rather give her half to the devil than to her brother. But she recovered, and some 3 months later, she mysteriously died, and on that night, a great storm arose from the lake. Lightning struck the mill and split it in two, and the local residents say they saw a strange horned figure dancing amongst the flames of the ruins. Years later, the two stones were recovered from the lake, but one mysteriously disappeared. Could it be that the devil got his due?
The Grosse Pointe War Memorial's Trial Gardens contains the one remaining grindstone from the legendary Windmill Point Mill. Could there be a phantom of theatrics right here in Detroit? Could there be a spirit so dedicated to great performance that it just can't resist the urge to critique productions? Yes, there is such a place. Wayne State University's Bonstell Theater has the continued presence of Jessie Bonstell herself. The building was the original Detroit Civic Building. Later it became a synagogue and was bought by Jessie Bonstell. After her death, it was bought by Wayne State University for its theater program. Students, staff, and directors have all felt Jessie's presence at the theater. She has been seen and heard. Her comments about whether a play or performance is good or not are often heard. Her shadow has been seen beside the curtain as if she were coaching from behind the scenes. Jessie not only gave the theater her heart and soul while she was alive, and in death doesn't seem to be ready to take her last curtain call yet. Many of the legends and lore of the metro area are filled with curious happenings and remnants of the past that remind us of the legends' truths. Will you choose to believe the legends that have been passed on to you tonight?